This video was brought to you by Brilliant. The death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, dubbed a martyr for democracy, has prompted many to think about the state of democracy not just in Russia, but around the world. On top of this, 2024 is not just an election year, it's the election year. Globally, more voters than ever in history will head to the polls, putting democracy to the test like never before. Early indications suggest that things aren't looking too good though. The Democracy Index, published by the Economist's Intelligence Unit, the EIU, shows that the last year's global average score was 5.23, the lowest score since the index began. Only 43 of the more than 70 elections this year are expected to be fully free and fair, and less than 8% of the world's population currently live in full democracies. So in this video, we're going to take a look at where democracy is most at risk, why it's in decline, and what this means for this year's elections. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Firstly though, how do you measure democracy? Well, as a concept, it goes beyond just elections, and there are a range of possible indices we could use. For the purpose of this video though, we're going to use the EIU's index, which includes electoral processes and pluralism, functioning of government, political participation, political culture, and civil liberties. Globally though, all factors apart from political participation have declined since 2008, and declined further during the pandemic, when civil liberties were curtailed. So with that in mind, is democracy at risk? Unsurprisingly, war-torn countries and authoritarian regimes are at the bottom of the EIU's democracy list. And most of this regression occurred among the non-democracies, suggesting that the authoritarian regimes are becoming more entrenched and hybrid regimes are struggling to democratize. For instance, Taliban-run Afghanistan came last for a third consecutive year. The biggest decliners, though, were Gabon and Niger, which both experienced coups in 2023. In fact, the average score for sub-Saharan Africa dropped to its lowest since the index began in 2006. But region-wide data shows that every region in the world, apart from Western Europe, faced a democratic decline, with Latin America experiencing the greatest decline for the 8th consecutive year. Moving away from the EIU data though for a moment, how have democratic elections fared in 2024 so far? Now, we made a video on a number of major elections, so if you want to check those out then you can. But so far, a worrying number of elections have been interfered with or even suspended, and constitutional limits have been defied. So we're not even 2 months into the year, and it's not looking great for democracy. So why could democracy be in decline? Well, the integrity of democratic practices and institutions, summed up by the EIU's metrics, are, as we see it, threatened by the increase in 3 main factors: technology, lawfare, and apathy to authoritarianism. So our first reason is the uncurtailed growth of technology, which has enabled the spread of disinformation and media manipulation to influence elections at an unprecedented rate by both foreign actors and domestic groups. For instance, there's the fast growth of AI technology and deepfakes, which have been used in attempts to interfere with elections. They're also getting increasingly hard to debunk as media regulations and laws fail to keep up with technology's fast growth. On top of this, AI can also enable online censorship. For example, according to Freedom House, in at least 21 countries there have been legal frameworks set up to require or encourage online platforms to use machine learning to take down disfavored socio-political or religious speech. Aside from AI, short-form videos have distorted political campaigning around the world. The newly elected Indonesian president, accused of human rights abuses during his time in the military under the dictatorship of his former father-in-law, rebranded himself during his campaign as a dancing cuddly grandpa in TikToks, some viewed over 20 million times. And then finally, group messaging platforms like WhatsApp have moved political discussions into opaque private messaging groups, where the degree of fast-spreading misinformation is difficult to ascertain. In fact, Freedom House has published that at least 47 governments have deployed commentators to manipulate online discussions in their favor, double the number from a decade ago. But it's not guaranteed that democratic institutions will always be outwitted by developing tech. Taiwan, for example, was able to push back against disinformation campaigns from China in its January election, with information campaigns from fact-checking groups and the Election Commission. But it's not even just technology. Our second reason behind the democratic decline is the use of lawfare, a very broad term which essentially means the use of law as a weapon when used illegally or fraudulently. And courts have been used to tilt the electoral playing fields by hobbling opposition candidates and parties. Interestingly enough, the increased use of lawfare in the past years could paradoxically be seen as a sign of progress. In the past, authoritarians stuffed ballot boxes or fixed the counts. However, better monitoring of elections have made this harder to do, leading lawfare as their favorite method instead. In the past couple of months, in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Senegal, Venezuela, and Russia, opposition leaders and parties have been disbarred by courts for very dubious reasons. But the third potential reason for this backsliding is that as the world is increasingly defined by great power competition, the various powers and axes are seeking to shore up their own positions. For the Western world, supposedly the defender and promoter of democracy, this can mean working to uphold democracy in certain countries. But in other cases, it means democracy is taking a back seat in favor of stability and security. The West, for example, has courted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi despite increasing violence used against minorities and democratic backsliding. Because India is an important bulwark against China. Meanwhile, European countries seeking alternative suppliers for fossil fuels since Russia invaded Ukraine have turned to non-democracies like Qatar and Azerbaijan. Similarly, seeking to address cross-Mediterranean migration, the EU sought out a deal with Tunisia's president, who has overseen the erosion of democratic progress since the country's 2011 revolution. Ultimately then, this year could be critical for democracy, and so far, developments are concerning. But what about the 50-odd elections that are still to come? Some of these will be charades, such as in Belarus and Russia. But even those expected to be free and fair will face challenges from home and abroad. Of course, the United States will be a key country to watch. Donald Trump's attempt to subvert the 2020 election, coupled with his multitude of legal difficulties, present a significant challenge to the country's institutions, and mean that this year's election has the potential of deeply destabilizing the country, with its ripples felt around the world. But the next months aren't all doom and gloom. In the graph we mentioned at the start of this video, all democratic metrics have declined except political participation, which has massively increased since 2008. So while democracy around the world might be on shaky ground and facing a difficult year, the silver lining is that even amidst this, it seems that more people across the world are determined and able to engage in political participation. A lot of stuff in our videos can often seem pretty complicated, especially when we dive deep into detailed data and economics. But there's a fun and easy way for you to learn more about these topics, which doesn't cost thousands of dollars a year or take years of studying. That's because Brilliant is the best way to learn maths, data science, and computer science interactively. And the fun thing is that it doesn't take long to learn either. These complex topics are broken down into small and accessible chunks, designed around your busy schedule, whatever your skill level. That means that if you spend just a few minutes a day, you can gain new knowledge over time in an actually fun way. As time goes on, you'll get used to that feeling of learning too, because it isn't just about sitting down and reading. Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning to teach you the principles of otherwise quite complex topics, and ensuring that you understand what's actually going on. So whether you want to brush up on your basic math skills, improve your employment prospects by learning about future technology, or just have fun coding, then you can check out everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days by clicking the link below. Plus, the first 200 people to sign up will get 20% off Brilliant's premium annual subscription. Thank you so much for your support.